In today's tutorials, we'll be learning all about creating this dynamic attendance tracker whereby as soon as the month changes or even the year changes, then the days and also the dates of the week or the month changes. And also, as soon as you mark the attendance of a student or even a worker over here, then the data automatically populates here for you to make a decision about the worker or the student who is being frequent or the ones who are being stubborn. So kindly stick with me to the end if you find it very much intriguing. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to kindly help OB Learning Hub grow. Well, sit back and let's enjoy this ride together. Let's go. So to have a tracker like that, the first thing we need to do is let's create a new sheet and bring in our months. So let's first type January, then hit enter. Then let's drag it down using the autofill to at least bring in the months through to December. Let's get rid of these ones and let's select the range and give it a name. So let's simply come to the name box. Let's type in month as the name range. Let's hit enter. Then now let's also introduce the years. So 2024 as a simulation through to 2026. So simply select that, hit enter. Then now let's also give this a name range. So come to the name box and let's give it a name year, hit enter. So now we've done that. So now let's move to our attendance or our main event. For the first one, let's bring in or let's select the first cell, that's B3. Then for here, we'll type in the month, come to the very next cell and type in the year. And let's jump or let's go overboard. And here we'll bring in the start date. You simply type in the start date, move to the next cell and type in the end date here also. So the end date, so you can follow suit and do same. And for the month here, we would like to use the data validation to bring in the list. So all we'll do is use the shortcut Alt DL to bring in this data validation dialog box. And for any value, we want a list rather. And for the source, we'll bring in the F3 or use the F3 shortcut to bring in this dialog box where it will introduce the name ranges we set. So we'll simply select the month since we want the month and it will appear here. We'll simply click on OK. Then this drop down list will be made available for us for the months. Then we'll come to the next cell for the year also and we'll follow same Alt DL to bring in the data validation. Then for any value we want a list for the source, we'll bring in the F3 or we'll hit the F3 key. We want the year, we'll simply hit on OK or simply hit enter. Then the year also will be done for us. And what we'll do next will be to also bring in a function here also. But before that, at least let's put a month here. Let's do that. And let's put a year here also. Let's say 2025 as a start. Let's center this for now. And to move on, we'll introduce the date value function to at least extract the date. So the date value, we'll type in the date. The date value function. So date value. So we'll simply hit the tab key and it is asking us for the date test. So for that, we'll simply bring in the first quote and hit 1 and bring in the second quote and bring in the ampersand. So all what we are trying to say is anytime we select a month, it has to begin from the first day of the month. So simply select this very first month. So simply select it, bring in the ampersand sign again and select the year also, close our parenthesis, hit enter. Then this text or this format will appear. We will like a date, right? So let's simply go to the short date format. This appears for us. And now we want the end date to introduce another function. So the EU month, this is what will bring us the end of month. So this is the start date and we'll simply bring in a comma. We want a 0. So close parenthesis, hit enter. Then here also, this is the format to appear. We want a short date. So this is how it will appear also. Just for your heads up, my date format appears in the month first, the day, then the year. So just note that also. So quickly, let's do some little formatting here. So here also, I would like to have the background to be a blue color and let's give it a font color of white. Then here also, let's at least give it a border. So simply give it an all border. Voila, we've quickly done that. And so now moving on, what we'll do is to introduce the name. So if it's a school or a workplace you want to track, you simply do that. So first the name, then we'll bring in the last name or your father's name. Then let's move on to the class. So if it is a class or a department you would like to create this tracker for, you can simply do that. For now, let's use the class. And here also to bring in the dates, we'll bring the equal sign, then select the start date. So we like the start date and hit the equal sign. And I wouldn't, or we don't want this format, so we'll change this date format. So let's go to the numbers group, click on this launch button, then let's use the custom format. And what we want, let's change this to this type. And what I want us to do is to get rid of the month. Then let's only keep the day, since already our month will appear for us. So let's simply click on OK. Let's move on. So let's simply drag it and let's see what happens. Oops, it gives us a zeros, which is an error, and this is not what we want. So here also, moving to the next cell to introduce the second date, what we will do is to use the if function. So simply bring in the if function. Then what we want is if this very date is less than, okay, if this very date is less than our end date, right? So let's look at end date since it remains a constant. Well, if it is true, what we want is to add this date to at least 1. So simply add it to 1. Then since it will be moving step by step, we will let this remain dynamic. If not also, let's simply ignore it or just leave it as blank and simply hit on OK. Then the second date will appear. So let's simply drag it to the very end and see what happens. And now we are done with that. The next thing we will do is to at least extract the day out of these dates. And as usual, we'll use the test function to do that. So let's simply do that. And the value is this, bring in the comma sign. And what we want is a triple D to at least extract only the short name of the days. So we'll simply hit enter, and this is how it will appear for us. And let's simply drag it to the very end. Then let's simply adjust our column. But first, let's do it this way rather. Let's adjust it a bit. Yay. Okay, and now let's center everything. Okay, at least this looks a bit more presentable, right? So anytime this month is to change, everything changes dynamically. As you can see, 30th April, 30 days of September, April, June, and November, right? Wow, taking me back to nursery rhymes. So now to move on, let's give this also a fill color. But then again, if you have to do it manually, it defeats the whole purpose of making everything dynamic. And so to do that, we'll first select this entire data and use the conditional formatting to give a condition here also. So we'll simply move to the styles group, click on the conditional formatting. Then we would like to set a new rule. We use a formula to determine that. So what do we want? We want to say if this very cell, okay, and since the row will remain a constant, we will simply just lock only the row whilst the column remains dynamic. If this very cell is not equal to a blank, if it's not equal to a blank, we want a format over here, and the format we want is to give it a fill color of, let's say, blue, and let's give it a font color of, say, white, to at least make it more clearer. And this is a format which the text will appear. So we'll simply click on OK. Then ooh la la, everything appears for us. Why did we do it this way? So that in the case that this is to change to, let's say, April, as you can see, the format also changes. How about if it changes to February? Then it changes also. So let's go back to January again. And so moving on, the next format we would like to give is to give this whole data set here an outline, or what we call a border. And to do that, we will simply use the conditional formatting in doing that also, at least to make everything dynamic, like I said previously. And so with this cell below selected, move to the styles group, another conditional format, you click on it, go to the new rule. Then here also we'll use a formula to determine which cells to format. And what do we want? What we want is if this very cell, so since we would like the column to be dynamic whilst the row remains a constant, we will lock the row. And if it is not equal to a blank, so if this is not equal to a blank, let's also give it a format. And what is the format we want? The fill or the border we want is the outline. So we like to give the outline a color, and let's give it, let's say, this color also. Let's select this one. So we like to give it this kind of borders, and let's click on OK. There is the format with which it will appear. Let's simply click on OK. Then now, without selecting or clicking on it anywhere, let's simply drag it to the very end, right? And as you can see, these borders have been given, and let's simply drag it down to the very end you want it to. So you can simply drag it to as many names as you want, whether thousands or hundreds. You can simply do that. So now what happens if we change this also to, let's say, April? As you can see now, it affects our data. How about if we change it to, let's say, February? then it affects it also. And so now moving on, we can simply highlight today's date for easy identification. And even if you like to highlight a Saturday or a Sunday to at least draw your attention to the days you are marking this attendance, you can do that. First, let's simply highlight a Sunday to act as an example. So we'll simply select these days over here. Then now moving to the conditional formatting, let's highlight the cell rules which contains a text. So we'll simply select the text that contains, and here also we'll simply type in the Sunday, and here any color you want, let's give it a custom format. So we'll simply select the custom format, and I would like a yellow color. So simply click on OK and click on OK. So now as you can see, the cells or the text that is Sunday has been highlighted for you. So anytime you are marking an attendance, it gives you a fair idea of where to touch and where not to touch. Anytime this changes also, it simply affects your data also. So that's the whole point of making everything dynamic. And also, if you would like to know which day or which day you are on already, you can also select this date over here. Then now move to the conditional formatting, then highlight cells. Here you go to a date occurring, so we'll simply click on a date occurring, and we wanted today's date, so today, and we'll simply give it a color. Let's go to the custom color again, and here let's give it a color of, let's see, what do you think, let's give it a green color just for the test, right? So we'll simply click on OK, and oops, what is happening? Well, today isn't exactly a January, right? So let's simply change it to September. And voila, today is the 17th of September. So it seems our function or our formula is working, or our conditional formatting is working. And so we've made everything as dynamic as possible, right? And the very next thing we would like to do now will be to mark the attendance, or give a test to mark the attendance. But here, rather than using a test, I would like for us to use the symbols, and we'll create a drop-down list for the symbols here also. But before that, let's at least create something small over here to indicate the total times present, the total times absent, and the total days. So let's simply do that. So here we'll type in the total absent, total present first, total present, the total present. Then let's move to the very next cell and the total absent. Then now let's move to the very up, and let's bring in the total or the school or work days. If you are a student or you are a worker, you can simply do that. So here it gives us the total days, and here we'll introduce or simply introduce what we call the total holidays. So let's simply do that, or let's simply type in the holidays. Okay, so now we've created this here. So let's simply do the little formatting we normally do, right? So we'll simply do that. Let's simply do same here also. So let's give this the borders as we always do. Here we don't make it dynamic. Don't worry, our dynamic data wouldn't affect it too much. We can simply also shift this a bit to at least separate them. Then voila, we are done with this. Let's simply stretch it out a bit. So now let's excite ourselves with the symbols. And so the symbols numbers we'll be using are, so 10004 for the correct sign, then 10006 for the wrong sign, and the very last code we'll be using will be the 11044 for in case they are holidays. So we'll simply highlight everything, then let's simply cut it from here, then let's come to the next sheet and do it over here. So we'll simply close that and bring in the unichar function here. So we'll simply type in the unichar function, and here we'll simply select this and type and hit it, so it gives us the correct sign. So let's simply drag it down. Then now it gives us all these symbols. So let's simply highlight all this, and let's simply name it as symbols. I don't think we'll be using it, but at least we've given it this name. So these are the signs or the symbols we'll be using to mark our attendance. So to introduce these symbols and make everything as dynamic as possible, I would like for us to use a formula. So I'll first type the formula over here. So I'll use the if condition. So if this very cell, and since the row will remain a constant whilst the column remains dynamic, I will simply log the row by hitting the F4 key twice. So if this very cell is not equal to a blank, or if these selected days are not equal to a blank, what I want to return is this particular symbols. So I'll simply select the entire symbols. And if not so, let's simply leave it as blank and let's close the parenthesis and hit enter. And since the condition has been met, then this appears also. So I would like to use this as a list. So I'll simply select where the formula appears and let me simply copy this formula. So I'll simply cut the formula. Then now let's select this entire range, right? So we'll simply select this entire range. Then let's move to the data tab and come to the data validation. Click on the data validation here. So under the data validation, you find data validation. Instead of any value you would like a list, then let's simply paste our formula over here and simply click on OK. Then now with everything highlighted or selected, let's simply center it. Then now you can see this drop down list appears. Let's simply select it and ooh la la, everything dynamically appears here for us, right? So now we've done that. But is that all? Black, white, black, white? No, at least let's give everything what we call a color, right? So we'll use the conditional formatting again, and here we'll use the shortcut Alt O D to introduce the conditional formatting, and we would like to bring in a new rule, and the new rule will be, so here we will format only cell that contain a cell value. Let's bring if is equal to. So now if the cell is equal to, so let's move to this sheet and select this one here also. So if it is equal to this, let's give it a format color of, let's say, green. So green for a thumbs up, right? And now this is how it will appear. Okay, let's add a new rule also, right? Then ooh la la, this is how it will appear. But this is not how I want our format to be. So let's change the format a bit. So Alt OD. Let's change this format a bit. So let's edit this first rule. Instead of the background being yellow, I want at least the font rather to be yellow. So I'll simply change that. Let me quickly change that. Okay. Let me simply correct that. Let's change this also. Let's apply it and click on OK. So now this is how it will appear. In the case that it's a holiday, this is how it will appear. How about if we have to change it to this? Then this is how it appears. If a student is absent, this is how it will appear. If it's a holiday like a Sunday or a Saturday, you select this, then you can track everything down. So now we've been able to do this. So we can simply track a student if a student is absent or if a student is present. So we can simply do this. Very great, right? And now the very next thing to do will be to create a formula here also, so that at least we can track the percentages as things move on. So here, to determine the total present, we'll use the count if function. But before that, let's bring in our schoolwork days and our holidays. And our holidays also, we'll use the count if function. So let's simply introduce the count if function here. So count if, so we hit the tab key and we will simply select this entire range. It is asking us for the range. We will simply select this entire range and it is asking us for the criteria. So the criteria, let's move to this and simply select this one and let's close our parenthesis and hit enter. So now the total holidays is 2 for now. And here also we will like the school days. So for the total school or work days, we'll use the counter function. So we'll introduce the counter function. So let's simply bring in the counter to at least count the cells which have been ticked so far. Because if you have to include the blank cells, then it means we will be unfair to some of the students since those days haven't appeared. So we'll simply select this entire range. Oops, sorry. This is the entire range we'll select rather. So we'll simply select this entire range. Then we'll close the parenthesis. But there is something we need to do. Since the holidays aren't part, we would have to deduct the holidays from it. So we'll simply bring in the minus sign and select these holidays we just did and lock it since it will be a constant and simply hit enter. So now actually we have what? 3 school days. So in the case that we have to add more, so let's simply add more. So here the person was absent. You can see this one also dynamically updates for us, right? So let me simply zoom in a bit. As you can see, it dynamically worked for us. But is that all? So moving on, we would like to calculate for the total present and the total absent in percentage form. And also, we would like to leave everything as blank in case the student hasn't been marked or the worker hasn't been marked. So here, we would like to use both the if and the count if function. So we'll simply introduce the if function first. And what we are trying to say is if the very selected cell or range is equal to a blank, if it's equal to a blank, then let's simply leave everything as blank. If not, let's count, or if the student has been marked or if the worker has been marked, let's count if. So we'll simply select this range. So if this very range meets a certain criteria, and what is the criteria? So let's simply move to the very next sheet and select the criteria. And since this will be a constant, we'll simply lock it. And also, since we would like for it to be in a percentage, let's simply divide our total present by our total work or school days. So we'll simply introduce the division sign and come to the attendance sheet again and divide it by this total. And since it will also be a constant, we will log both the column and the row. And now let's close the entire parenthesis to end our formula. And let's simply hit enter to see the kind of magic we'll be dealing with. Voila! And it is appearing as 1. Why is it appearing as 1? This is because we've set it to a no decimal point. So let's simply introduce the decimal point. And now let's drag everything down to see what happens. And voila! In case the student hasn't been marked, then everything remains what? Blank. So now let's set this also to a percentage form. So we'll simply do that. So 80%. And this gentleman here whose name we don't know, he who must not be named, is 20%. And here also, let's at least give it a little bit of a data validation or a conditional formatting. So we want to give it a data bar. So we'll simply select the color green. So let's simply select the green color. So at least here, you can track everything that goes on as quickly or as soon as possible. You can quickly track it with this data bar. And let's also do same for the total absent also. So use the same criteria or the same formula. So equal to if this very cell is equal to a blank, then let's leave everything as blank. If not, let's introduce the count if function. The count if function, the range is obviously this one. So we'll simply select the entire range. Then let's simply introduce the criteria. The criteria is this. And since it will be a constant, let's lock it. And let's divide it by the total number of school or work days. Let's lock it. Then now let's close first count if function, or let's end, and let's close the whole or the entire function or formula also, and let's simply hit enter. Then let's drag it down. Let's drag the whole thing down. Let's put it in a percentage form, and let's introduce this also. Oops, it appears everything remains at 0%, even though we can see that some students or the workers missed some days. Well, what is actually happening here? Let's move to our formula. Okay, it seems board mass, right? Board mass really affected us over here. So let's simply edit our formula or our function. So here, we will simply bring in the brackets here so that at least it will divide all our count if function for us after it has executed it. And let's get rid of this. And now let's hit enter to see. Yay! Now it is working. Let's simply double click on it. And yes, now our function is actually, or our formula is actually working. Let's also give it a bit of data bar. Let's give it a red color. Let's simply give this a bit of a heading. And so now we have finally created this attendance tracker. If this video has been very helpful, kindly be sure to hit the like and subscribe button to support the channel. Until next time, it's bye for now.